Well casing, I think this is a very important issue. I was privileged, one of the first things I did when I came on board in January was get to work with the technical advisory board members who have been rewriting Chapter 78 of the 25 PA Code, Chapter 78, to make sure that it is up to standard and is among, if not the most aggressive well casing standard in the country. What you've got is 3 layers of casing. The first one goes through the freshwater aquifer, the second one to depths of around 1,500 feet, the final one to to that 8,000 feet mark. And each one is steel with cement around it. Very important how that's built, how that's centered in the in the space. And I think the public comment period that just ended last week on that, I was privileged to have very few comments on that rule because of how much work had gone in to the technical advisory board from industry, from interest groups, from state government and others. And I think what we have in academia, and I think what we have is an updated standard that addresses a lot of the concerns, but maybe we still need to revisit that going forward. Next slide. The geology and the drilling, I'm not going to get into a lot of it today because we probably don't have any land. Do we have any landowners in the room of Marcellus acreage? Oh, that's great. Oh, that's wonderful. No, it's great to see that Philadelphians understand that process, and there's some folks in the room that own land, and I'm not sure what's wrong with owning land. I think that's a good thing. But significant acreage currently under lease, quite a few additional acres to be leased. Typically a 5-year lease term, so any of you who may have signed a lease for developing your land, that's typically 5 years, although every lease has got its own unique aspects. Rigs throughout Pennsylvania, and I think one of the things that's important is that Pennsylvania right now is seen as having the right economics with good gas, so we can get that gas economically to market. And I think that that's important for the goal of energy supply, stable, reliable energy supply. So every one of us in this room, when we go to heat the house, when we go to turn on the electricity, when we go to use our stove, that's available. This is a map of the drilling activity through 2009. You see in blue the drilled wells and in red the permitted wells. About 5 wells are permitted for every well that ends up being drilled up till now. And I think that to the point about who's permitting these and inspecting these wells, I think it's a good time to mention the Marcellus Shale Coalition last year worked with the agency to increase the fee structure. It had been about $100 per well for years and years. Increased that so it's in the average about $3,000, $3,500 per well and up from there. And so as a result of those additional fees, even though we've heard a lot about budget cuts at DEP, those revenues have allowed DEP to hire, January alone they announced another 68 inspectors that we were very supportive of. That's allowed them to open 2 new offices and to do that kind of inspection with the resources to do that. This is just kind of showing you a little bit about kind of the rig count in the U.S. versus Pennsylvania and West Virginia, but I think we better keep going through a couple of these. This graph really just kind of shows the decoupling, if you will, of crude oil prices in green and the natural gas futures in blue. And what I think is important there is for a long time you really had those 2 fuels tracking. This is a direct result of the supply. That map with all those shale plays under development, that's allowing the U.S. to have a larger supply, which is allowing the costs to be more balanced and certainly separating from from oil. That begs the question, are there opportunities for us in Pennsylvania to have more fleet vehicles run on natural gas? Up in Center County, where the Pennsylvania State University is, they've been running for over a decade. They've been running all of their public transportation on natural gas. And you know, when you look at an area like Philadelphia and the non-attainment issues here, that's one way to decrease not just emissions, but noise and costs for fuel. The economic impact, Penn State University had done a study last year that looked at the what happens in Pennsylvania's economy as a result of what I'm sure you've read about, you know, the investments that are coming in to the state. Looking at 2010 alone, about $8 billion in economic impact. State and local taxes of about $1 billion that are coming in 2010 to Pennsylvania's local and state governments. Two components of that: the $871 million was estimated about $600 million to the state, so dollars going into Pennsylvania's general fund. $9 million was the General Assembly made a decision last year to lease state lands, and that $129 million, that was the revenue that came to the state of Pennsylvania as a result of the upfront lease payment for those tracts. And then total jobs, I think, is one last thing on the last slide. If you would go wrong way.
Oh, wrong.
Wrong way. There we go. Total jobs about 107,000 estimated in 2010, and I think, you know, what I've seen through some of of our associate members, these are the folks who are growing because of the natural gas industry. U.S. Steel, as an example, joined the coalition last month, and what they're seeing is they're bringing more people to make more steel, and that's resulting in some, I guess what I would say, the enthusiasm that you know that takes hold in the places around Pennsylvania where this industry is representing an exciting growth. Personally, having grown up in the 70s in Pittsburgh, I've only witnessed decline in the economy, and to be part of something that has investment coming in, has smart people wanting to work on issues that really affect our children and our children's future, I think it's a very, very exciting time for Pennsylvania. Next. I won't go through all this, but this is really the piece of the Penn State study that's on our website. It's www.pamarcellus.com, and it walks through all the components of the economy that are affected by the development of the natural gas industry. Uses of natural gas by sector. I'm sorry that these colors aren't very visible. But you know, one of the things we think about natural gas for heating, but there are quite a few other uses. About 29% of gas supply in the country goes to electricity generation. About 34% is plastics. You know, anything that's using any chemicals that are using methane as a feedstock. You know, commercial applications, and then this 3%, that's really where this transportation issue is, and one that I think has some real promise for Pennsylvania to convert some of those vehicles. And you know, I think we went through kind of no SOx or particulate matter, 80% less NOx. So it really is a very clean fossil fuel, and has some applications that, you know, many of our companies are looking into supporting in transportation.